Welcome back to the How to Find Your Moxie podcast. I'm your host, Lizz Carter Clark, author of the book How to Find Your Moxie, and the founder of College Moxie, a nonprofit whose mission is to empower every woman to know their worth. Today, we hope that you gain some nuggets of wisdom that can help you move a little closer to a life full of confidence, joy, and love, so we can all build stronger, more supportive communities wherever we find ourselves. Welcome, Mackenzie. How are you?
Good. Hi, Liz. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really glad you're back.
Yes. I did want to ask maybe you some questions today. I feel like we've learned about me, but I kind of want to hit you with some good ones.
Okay.
Where do you see College Moxie in 10 years from now?
Oh my gosh.
What do you envision for it?
I love that question. So ideally, hi, Scout. We have two dogs that like to enter our podcast area.
Our mascots.
This is Scout. She's still working on her Moxie.
Yeah.
She's a little shy sometimes. But if you see us, just, paying attention to something between us. That's what it is. Okay, so ideally, I want to be out of business because I want every woman to know her worth and there not be a need for what we do.
Yeah.
Like, that is my ultimate goal of what I would like. Otherwise, I think I've said this to you before. I am always so much more committed to what we're doing than how we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And so all I care about is furthering our impact, which is why Maddie saying we need to do this podcast was like such an awesome blessing at the right time, because I'd been trying to figure out how can I further our reach and impact more students without me having to be gone more often. You know, I'm already away from home a lot.
She's a busy gal.
During the year, and I love it. I love every minute of it. But if we can further our impact while I'm still home some, then that would be really nice. So I guess in 10 years, I just want to know that we are making as big of an impact as we've had opportunity for.
Yeah.
While still living lives that are full and rich in personal relationships as well. I don't ever want to sacrifice that for work, but I also want to take advantage of every opportunity that we're given that makes sense and aligns with our values.
Yeah. That was good. All right. Those are my questions for Liz today.
Those are good questions.
I know.
We should put you in charge of questions more often.
I was like, I got good ones today.
I love it. Okay, I'm super excited today to talk about circle of trust because I think this is so, so important. What does circle of trust mean to you, first of all?
When I hear that phrase, circle of trust, to me, I instantly think of the handful of people that I could tell everything ever to. I think the circle of trust is those people that I know I could say anything and be fully authentically myself, and they're still going to love me at the end of the day.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that something that doesn't always occur to us is to have multiple circles. Yeah. And, you know, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Someone's on the island or they're voted off the island. Like, we can actually have different circles. And so
I like that point.
Yeah, my friend Andrea actually created this exercise in a program that she developed with a film that I was in called Catching Faith, which was super cool. Mm-hmm. And Andrea developed this workbook that went with it. And Circle of Trust was an exercise that she introduced that I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And it was actually something that I think my character talked about in the film, interestingly enough. But it brought together this concept of like having different circles. So, you know, recognizing who are the people that have proven with their actions more than their words that they deserve to be close to our heart. And then who are the people that haven't quite earned the right to like the most intimate parts of who we are.
Yeah.
And then, you know, who are the people that we can care for and cheer for and wish all the good in the world for, but from a little bit more of a distance, you know? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think we don't consider the actions as much as the words. And we think like, well, this person says they're my best friend, but maybe every time I share something, it turns out that like other people then know what's going on with me and like they're sharing my dirty laundry, you know? And I think a lot of times when I'm working with college students, especially ones that are just entering college, there haven't really been a lot of conversations in their lives around the concept of boundaries and what that looks like. So
boundaries are hard. very hard for
They
people.
can be. Yeah. What do you think is hard about them?
I think, I've definitely had moments where I've tried to like set boundaries with friends, like you're saying, tell them one thing and everybody knows.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to stick to those because I know sometimes you have great friends and sometimes they're not that great. And so you try to like stand by what you believe in, but I think it's easy to break those sometimes. And I find myself breaking those boundaries.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that actually makes a lot of sense because it's not even necessarily having boundaries that's hard. It's like being consistent with them. Because I'm the same way. Like there can be someone that was in my life that like I had a really great connection with, and then something happened that broke the trust, and I move them to an outer circle or occasionally off the island, and then reconnect later, and I'm just so excited to see them that I don't necessarily remember why the boundary was in place. Yeah. The good thing is usually I remember that there was a boundary, and that helps me to be discerning. Sometimes I think it's actually a good quality that I like easily forget what people have done to offend me.
Same.
I'm kind of good with it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like, it's okay. Time heals.
Yeah, as long as we're not consistently putting ourselves back into the same situation if it's not healthy,
Yeah.
But I think helping students in particular understand that like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be either everyone in my life has access to the most vulnerable places in me or we're not friends.
Yeah.
Like we can have friends that are really close to us, and probably I would say maybe that's only a couple of people that really have like proven to be safe in that space sometimes. But then having like peripheral circles where it's like, these are the people that I have a really good time with, but these are the people that I would go to for support. These are the people that I know are going to ride or die for me.
Yeah. I find that with my like friends from like my childhood. I find that in people from home just because
I love that.
I think they know you kind of from a different perspective than people that you meet later in your life, I found that my home friends know me like good and bad, the good and bad of me. And my friends in college do as well, but I think there's that different bond, that you have.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because even being older, like I still feel that way. And I think for me, part of it is that like my high school friends are like the only people in my life at this point that like knew my brother.
Yeah.
And so that's like so meaningful to me because I mean, my husband obviously cares like about that part of my life. And I have friends that I've made in college and since college that like deeply care and have like been supporters of our foundation for children's cancer research. I mean, like invested, but there's just something so beautiful about the people that were there for me through it. Like they were there when he got diagnosed. They were there when I felt alone and like, didn't really have present parents through high school. They were there at his funeral. They were there the day that he passed away. I mean, like there's just something so special about that. And I don't really know that I've ever fully thanked them for like being there in that moment, but there's definitely a bond that is like created when you go through something like that,
Yeah, those long-term relationships. And I think with that too, I think you wrote in your book and you said that like the closest people sometimes see the worst of you. And I thought that was very, very true because the closest people to you, that's sometimes where you let off your steam and but I appreciate so much that those people have stuck with me through those bad times, Yeah.
Yes, and to know like, from all the other things that we've talked about throughout the podcast, like we don't feel like we have to be perfect or pretend to be perfect in front of them. That pressure is probably a lot less with those people. We know that we're seen, we're known, and we're loved, and we hold value when we're with those people, even though they see our messiness, Like, how beautiful is that? And sometimes I think going back to like comparison and pressures of social media, it can be so easy to somehow believe from what we see that like other people have like hundreds of people in their lives that are that for them. When in actuality, I think if during high school, during college, you have like one really amazing friend, that's really awesome. Yeah. If you've got more than that, great. But even just to have one, I think is like super special because they're the people that are going to love you no matter what and show up for you at a time when like it's not convenient for them. like,
That's
that
so
doesn't
special.
come along all the time, you know?
Yeah, very much. And I've noticed that, like, you know, I've gone through a rough time and reached out to people, and the people who actually, like, will be there for you, it's so special, you know?
Yeah.
It's also, like, what kind of friend are they, and how can, they've been a good friend to me, how can I be a good friend to them? And, you know, be there for each other in that way. I think a lot of people in college, like, show that they have a million friends and they're friends with everybody and besties, but I think they're so special just to have a few people that are your ride or dies, you know?
Okay, so question. If there's ever been a time when like you've realized that maybe someone has had a little too much access to you and maybe hasn't been safe with your information or whatever, and you've kind of created a little distance there, has that ever been hard to do because you feel guilty?
Yes.
I feel like that's definitely
I'm
a trend.
currently going through this at the moment.
Okay, without specifics, can you?
I have a friend,
Sure.
and I really reached out and was like, hey, girl, I really need you. And, like, in a way of, like, I need you not to just, like, go out with. Like, I want to
Yeah.
hang out on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. Like, let's make dinner together. Or let's just let's go to the movies or something. And I only get a text to hang out when it's going out, you know? And that's not necessarily a true friendship to me. And I think I've come to realize that, like, sometimes I have to take a step back, you know? They might just be my going out friends in quotations, you know? And that I've tried and I, like, put myself out there and that wasn't received, and that's okay. And that's that person, and they have their own life going on. And if they're not willing to be there for me, and that's okay, you know? And I think that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but...
Yeah.
And that's kind of where boundaries is just... kind of, what am I going to do about it? I just kind of have to deal with it and know that, like, we have a different friendship than I would think.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. You're touching on something that I think is very important, and that is being able to recognize where maybe we've given some of our power away.
Yeah.
Because if someone not showing up in a way that we want them to is really hurtful, then that space kind of takes our power back a little bit too, because it keeps us from continuously putting ourselves in a position to be let down and be rejected. I think so much of handling that just emotionally and in clinging to our moxie has to do with managing our expectations of other people. And I think that is a constant sliding scale for me. You know, it's like there are people that like have been a really great part of my life for a while, and then were no longer so available, and then came back to being available. And I just think to myself, had I just like voted them off the island the first time that I felt hurt or felt like I wasn't the priority I used to be, or, you know, kind of spiraled into like, what did I do wrong that they're not as available to me, when in actuality, looking back, that probably had a lot more to do with like whatever was going on in their life that I didn't fully understand, even if I knew about it, you know, just because we do tend to be focused on whatever our stuff is. I would have missed out on like the reconnection sometimes, you know?
True.
But I think there's definitely a tendency, especially as women, for us to feel guilty when we establish boundaries, because we know that like creating distance can sometimes hurt people. But at the same time, it's not like, it's not harm. It's hurt feelings. And sometimes I think that's also giving people the opportunity to reflect and maybe think, okay, why is there distance? You know?
What happened? Yeah. That. So when you talk to college students, how do you tell them to set boundaries? How do you set boundaries with your friends? What do you tell them?
I think it has to start, I mean, that's a great question, first of all, because like it's kind of just conceptual, right? But I think it all has to start with knowing that we have a gut that's worth trusting.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, and we have a whole episode on this, but like sometimes we choose confusion because what our head wants and our heart knows are not aligned, and we're not ready to face what we know is real, you know? And I think sometimes we will choose confusion because we don't want to trust our gut. And that's when like, I think anxiety kicks in, because then it's like, okay, wait, like everything in me is saying this isn't right, but I want to force this. I want to make this friendship work because of whatever it is, you know? I think another great thing that my friend Fran says is feel your feet on the ground. And like, it's strange how just feeling your feet physically on the ground can just instantly bring you into the present moment. Because when I was in my 20s and going through a rough time, I used to just really spiral in my thoughts, and a lot of it was like in the what ifs. And I think when it comes to boundaries, if we can really ground ourselves, and again, maybe go back to like those lists of like, what is it that I know is true?
Yeah.
What is the rest of the information? And then in the rest of the information, oh, how many of these are assumptions that I have made based on this? Now, it might be that there's a lot of factual evidence. I can tell you 4 times where this person told me they were going to show up for me and didn't. And it was in times that really mattered. I think maybe I want to tell myself, like, establish a boundary, meaning I'm going to know right now while nothing's wrong that next time something's wrong, that's not going to be my go-to person. I'm going to put that energy somewhere else. I think a lot of times when it comes to our friendships, especially when we look at comparison and social media and like, oh, well, this is the crowd I want to be seen with because that gives me more social clout, or whatever is happening in our heads with things that we've talked about. A lot of times we tend to take for granted our friends that really belong in that most intimate circle, you know, the closest to our hearts. A lot of times we take for granted those friends because we don't have to work for their love.
Yeah.
And how sad that they're the ones that like just kind of sit on the sidelines and don't get the attention sometimes because they're achievable, you know? Yeah. I mean, it's like we spend our energy trying to get the approval of a certain one instead of realizing, wow, I'm going to go be appreciative of like the thing that I have over here. So when it comes to like literally how to establish boundaries, I think it's a case by case basis. And it's like, you know, I wrote in the book about a situation where there was a friend that I had to like remove from the island, and it was very, very painful for me, and it was not at all what I wanted to do. But my gut was screaming so loudly that things were wrong that I chose to honor my gut, even without knowing all of the details. And I still don't think that I know all the details, but there was enough there that I needed that separation. I will say that's only happened maybe, well, I don't even know if it has happened one other time. Like that is such a rarity in my life. That's why it was hard. But each relationship has to be its own, you know? And it's like this relationship needed something extreme. Most of my relationship, it's like, okay, maybe this just isn't like the time to have these expectations from this friend. So I'm just going to put a boundary here. I mean, it doesn't mean like I'm talking about something and that person enters the room, I'm going to stop talking. Like, that's not kind, right? But it's just being discerning about who we are allowing into our most intimate spaces and have they earned the right to be there? Or is this a new friend that I feel comfortable trusting and they haven't proven that they're not safe with it? I think that's okay too, you know? But when it comes to boundaries, I think the most important thing is recognizing what evidence exists and then trusting our gut based on that. But making thoughtful decisions, having thoughtful responses over emotional reactions.
Yeah. And do you think every time you set a boundary with somebody, it deserves a conversation?
No.
Okay. So like, because I feel like I kind of struggle with that. Like I mentioned this girl earlier. And I'm frustrated. Do I send her a text message, or do I, next time she asks me to hang out, say I can't? How do you navigate that one? Because she'll ask me to hang out and do stuff, but I still want to like have that boundary for myself.
Yeah.
But then she doesn't know if I don't tell her.
Right. And I think that's a good question. I think it's always going to be a case-by-case basis. I would say the very first thing we should always do is ask ourselves what is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't ever want to be someone that mistreats someone because they mistreated me. That's not how I want to live my life. That's not the energy I want to put into the world.
Yeah.
You know? If there's a situation where I've been hurt and I know that I want to continue this friendship, even if it needs to look different for a little while and then see what that leads to. For me, that would probably be worth having a conversation and saying, listen, I just need to tell you that I've been kind of hurt by this and I also want to acknowledge that I don't know everything that's been going on with you in your life. And if there's anything you want to talk about, please share. But I care about our relationship enough to let you know that I really feel hurt by this.
Yeah.
And then leave space for them to respond. I would also say decide before you enter that conversation that all you need out of it is to be able to say what you need to say. I don't need really validation. You don't need acceptance. Don't put yourself in a position to where like you're giving them your power to determine whether or not you are worthy of an apology. Mm-hmm. Because if someone apologizes or doesn't, that's on them, you know? I love the saying that like your behavior says so much more about you than it does me. You know, like someone can blow up on me. That says more about who they are than about who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible for how I respond to that, you know?
Yeah.
So I always want to leave a room proud of how I behaved in it, even if I'm not happy, even if I'm angry, even if I'm sad or hurt. But I think the relationship has to be like a singular decision. Like there may be a friend that is worth having that conversation with if you can know ahead of time, I'm going to manage my expectations of what I need out of this.
Yeah.
All I need is to know that I said what I needed to say. It's not even I needed to be heard, because you can't guarantee that you're going to be heard, you know?
Yes.
But then I think there are also situations where it might be someone that like they've just been a party friend and you want more from them, but they've never shown that maybe they're capable of that, then I don't know that that warrants a conversation, because it might be trying to tell someone that you wish they were something they weren't. I think if they've been that friend for you and now they're not, maybe that deserves more of a conversation. But I think ultimately it depends on like, where do you see this in the future? Is there a chance for that person to redirect and like bring this back together? Has there been evidence of close support previously, or is it just something that you've kind of fantasized and wanted from this person, but really they've just always been like a good time friend?
Yeah. I think that's like makes it so clear like how to navigate these type of issues. I think that's like a great way how to like kind of just start to figure out where your thinking is in your relationships with your friends.
Yeah. And I mean, all of this stuff is like everything in this book, everything is just what I wish I'd known when I was your age. You know?
I'm very glad I got to read it.
It's all the stuff that I'm glad. Thank you. It's all stuff that I wish I had like learned younger. And I think this concept of circle of trust is just so important, because we don't talk enough about boundaries. We don't think critically enough about how do people show up in our lives in a way that feels safe and supportive to us, without us needing them to be something they're not, and without us feeling like everyone has earned the right to the most vulnerable parts of our story.
Yeah. Yes. I agree so much with it. It puts it into perspective. Like, it really makes me think about, like, my relationships and how I want to continue them to make them better and improve them. And also, like, keep myself safe and keep my peace and, you know, hold myself in my own little safe bubble with my circle of people that I know that aren't going to leave me, and that I have their backs, they have mine. And I think that's honestly the most important thing at the end of the day. We can have boyfriends and girlfriends and whatever, but to have like good friends, I think, is the most important thing. We all want community. We all want people.
Yeah. And if we find one person that seems to get us as much as they're capable of getting us, how awesome is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all want connection.
Good stuff. Mm-hmm. Thanks for listening to today's episode and being part of our community. Be sure to like and follow along to stay up to date with all the awesome things College Moxie is doing. We could not do it without you, so thank you for being part of us, and have a great day and keep shining bright.